Hello everyone. I firstly want to say thank you to you all, especially my subscribers. Your ideas keep me striving to make me better at this. I really do truly appreciate all of you. Even if you're not subscribed and have just stopped in for a listen, you all brighten my day. This story is unique and I love the idea. It was requested by Taylor Morgan. I am enjoying writing this one, man. I just hope you and everyone like it. I also hope I got the right meaning of the type of story you wanted. It would be hilarious if I took this long and I got the terminology wrong. Please keep in mind I do not know where this story will go, but I won't stop until it's completed, whether it's 5 parts or 50. Any ideas for a future chapter are always welcome from anyone in the comments. Anyway, here is part 1. Enjoy! June 1994. It was supposed to be the trip where I finally asked Sally to marry me. I had the ring tucked into a waterproof pouch in my windbreaker. Now that ring was at the bottom of the Pacific, along with the deck, the galley, and possibly Sally too. One moment our yacht, a 34-foot beauty I spent 3 years of personal training commissions to charter, became like a toy in a bathtub. The storm had sliced through the sun-drenched waters off Costa Rica. Sally and I lost in the easy rhythm of our holiday. The next, the sky opened and a wall of water 2 stories tall rose from the churning abyss and crashed down on us with the force of God himself. I remembered the brutal shock of the cold, the salt water searing my lungs, Sally's choked cry, my desperate, futile lunge. Her hand, soft yet resilient, slipped from mine amidst the unholy chaos, ripped away by currents. Then, nothing but the crushing blackness of the ocean. I fought instinct overriding the paralysis of terror, every muscle fiber screaming in protest. Years of personal training, of pushing my body to its limits, kicked in. I swam, blind and breathless, not knowing which way was up. I broke through, gasping, salt stinging my eyes, and immediately scanned for Sally. I screamed for her, but not even I could hear my voice over the screaming wind, ripped away by the gale. The next thing I knew, I had lost consciousness. I awoke to the sunlight, and there was a rough, granular surface scraping against my cheek. My lungs burned, air rasping in and out, the sound of waves crashing, no longer a threat, but a dull, rhythmic percussion. Coughing, sputtering, I pushed myself up. Salt water streaming from my nose and mouth, stinging my eyes. I was on a beach, a pristine crescent of white sand, framed by a wall of impossibly green jungle that rose steeply towards a mist-shrouded peak. The storm, it seemed, had vanished as quickly as it had arrived, leaving behind only a bruised, leaden sky and an unsettling stillness. I yelled for Sally. I spent what seemed an eternity patrolling the beach, calling for her, my throat raw. Nothing, just the waves crashing against the shoreline, the subtle wind, and the distant call of tropical birds. I scanned the horizon, hoping to see the distinctive silhouette of the yacht, or at least another piece of it large enough to suggest wreckage. Nothing, just the endless expanse of the Pacific, quiet and deceptively peaceful. I turned my attention to the shoreline, staggering forward, my bare feet sinking into the wet sand. In my desperate search for her, I found a cushion from the yacht, a shattered crate of Chardonnay we'd been saving, and one of Sally's sandals, yellow with a decorative sunflower. I held it to my chest, the rubber still smelling faintly of her coconut tanning oil. The sight of it made my stomach drop into a bottomless pit. She's not here. The current must have carried her further down, or... I refused to finish that thought. Behind the beach, the jungle loomed, inviting in a sense. The beach eventually ended in a wall of impassable rock features. I looked at the tree line. All I could think about was Sally. I didn't care about my scrapes or bruises. They were mere distractions from the bigger picture. I remembered she was wearing her vest. The current was pulling east. If she didn't hit the rocks, she's still on this beach somewhere, or further inland. Maybe she had been washed ashore further down on another beach. She might have headed for high ground to look for a settlement. I stepped off the sand and into the tree line. The transition was immediate. The sound of the ocean vanished, replaced by a wall of white noise. The screech of tropical birds and the incessant, high-pitched thrum of insects grew even louder the deeper I got. I pushed through walls of bush. I had to use my forearms to shield my face from the thorns and the serrated edges of the palms. The mountains on either side of me rose like the walls of a cathedral, draped in hanging vines and mist. It felt claustrophobic. Despite the vastness, the jungle felt like it was pressing in on me. I trekked for what felt like miles, though I knew my pace was slow. My feet, bare and battered, bled on to the damp earth. Without any sort of compass or direction, I just naturally assumed I was heading for the center of whatever island I was on. Through a break in the ferns, I pushed through a final barrier of broad-leafed plants and stumbled out onto a road. It wasn't a paved highway, but it was sophisticated. It was a road made of crushed rock, compacted into a hard, smooth surface designed for modern vehicles. I felt a surge of hope so intense it made me dizzy. A road meant people. A road meant a radio, maybe a helicopter. Following the road, I walked for, I think, 10 minutes, my eyes darting between the dense brush on either side. The road was well maintained. There were no weeds growing in the center, no signs of erosion. I could hear strange noises, distant, large animals perhaps, maybe miles away. I risked my location to anybody or animals around by calling for Sally as I walked. I stopped to listen. The jungle insects seemed to pause for a second, a collective intake of breath. Then the buzzing resumed. No human voice replied. The sinking feeling in my chest intensified, a cold weight that threatened to pull me down. Where was she? If she had washed up elsewhere, would she have found this road, or was she still out there, lost in the jungle? I kept walking, the road curving slightly to the right, hugging the base of the mountain. The sun was higher now. I was wiping the sweat from my brow every few minutes. My dehydration limit was being pushed further than I thought possible. And then I saw the fence. It appeared suddenly as I rounded a bend. It was not a chain-link fence or a wooden palisade. It was a masterpiece of industrial security. Stretching as far as I could see into the jungle on either side of the road were massive steel bollards, 20 feet tall, anchored into concrete footings. Strung between them were thick horizontal cables. The cables didn't look like wire, they looked like the structural tendons of a bridge. The fence in front of me looked like it was meant for vehicles to pass through, with 2 sets of opening steel gates. I approached slowly, my pulse hammering in my neck. On the side of the road, a large yellow sign was bolted to the steel. It bore a series of symbols for high voltage and a skull and crossbones accompanied by bold black text. Danger, extremely high voltage, 10,000 volts, do not approach within 5 feet of perimeter. I walked towards it, my steps unsteady. The air here felt different, a little cooler, perhaps from the slight breeze that found its way down the mountain. The fence showed no signs of being alive, no hum of electricity, no telltale crackle. I looked around and spotted a stick by the side of the road. I threw it at the fence wires. And nothing. The stick just bounced off, surprisingly normal. The power that charged the fence was off. My mind now provided with something else to analyze. My eyes traced the base of the fence, looking for some sort of entry point. But all I could think was, who builds a fence like this in the middle of nowhere, on an island through a jungle? I called out for anyone, my voice raised. I even called for Sally, but with every cry only the silence answered me back. I leaned against the fence, catching my breath. My exhaustion and dehydration was profound, but underneath it all was an unnerving and unclear gut feeling. Who's to say the people on this island, if any exist, are friendly? My dread set in. This island could be one used by pirates, smugglers, or even a secret government facility. Oh boy, now that's a stretch, I thought. But Sally, if she made it here, this road was the most obvious path. This fence, a clear barrier, she might be on the other side. Or she might have walked along this very road looking for me. I needed to think logically. What did I know for sure? I was on an island, unnamed as far as I could tell. The island had been developed with a significant amount of infrastructure. That infrastructure was currently defunct. Power was off, and no sign of any life whatsoever, besides local birds and the blasted annoying insects. I decided to take another look at the double gate used for vehicles. Maybe I could squeeze through the gaps. Either that or I would have to follow the fence line, and that could take me hours or days. I took a good look at it, and came to the conclusion that it would be impossible for me to fit through even the largest gap. Not in this or any lifetime, I thought. Then I felt something. It was embarrassment, even with no one around. I thought to myself, if there's no power, would the gate just open? I gripped the latch and yanked it as hard as I could. The force almost sent me flying and onto my arse. It was loose, which meant the gates were unlocked. So with that, I made it past that hurdle. In hindsight, I decided not to close either of the gate doors, just in case Sally was still behind me. I would never forgive myself if she were stranded with no way to get through the damned gate. Who knows how long the power will be off for? The road was only wide enough for one vehicle, though no vehicles were present. My steps were a rhythmic shuffle, my eyes constantly scanning the ground, hoping to see a footprint not my own, a discarded item, anything that might speak of Sally. Or any other person. The light faded rapidly, painting the sky in streaky purples and oranges. The air grew cooler, but the humidity remained. The jungle, which had been merely a backdrop, began to feel more alive in the dimness, shifting, rustling, its sounds amplified. Distant hoots, an occasional piercing shriek that sounded like a bird of prey, but unnervingly loud. My senses were heightened, every nerve ending screaming a low hum of anxiety. I continued for what felt like an hour. The road gently curved with the contours of the land. The fence was seamless, no gates, no breaks. It was as if this section of the island was meant to be hermetically sealed. My scientific mind, trained to observe and deduce, found itself increasingly bewildered. This level of investment, this engineered isolation, for what? A private estate, a biological research facility, a high-security prison for something unusual. My thoughts kept returning to Sally, a painful, constant refrain. If she were out here, injured and alone, the thought was unbearable. But if she were inside this infrastructure, what then? Whatever lay on this side of the fence, it was protected with a fervor that bordered on paranoia. And now it was defunct. That was rarely a good sign. As darkness truly fell, a sliver of moon struggling to pierce the thick cloud cover, I knew I couldn't continue walking. I was beyond exhaustion. I needed shelter, however rudimentary. I needed to rest, to gather my strength, to think clearly. I scanned the fence line one last time, still solid, still unbroken. My gaze drifted upwards to the top of the barrier. The vertical poles, now just dark silhouettes against the faintly glowing sky, were evenly spaced. My eyes tracked them, then noticed something else, something I hadn't seen in the daylight. Higher up, attached to some of the supporting structures, were small, cylindrical objects, security cameras. Maybe sensor lights, they're dead now, but proof of a once active system. The sheer number of them, the density, implied a place of considerable value or considerable threat. I looked around for a suitable place to hunker down. The jungle was impenetrable. No easy way back in without facing unknown dangers in the dark. The road was exposed. My eyes caught on a slight depression where the road met the base of the hill I'd come down. A small culvert, perhaps, or a natural hollow under the exposed roots of a large tree at the jungle's edge. It offered minimal cover, but it was better than nothing. Huddling in the meager shelter, I pulled what was left of my shirt tighter around me, despite the humidity. The night sounds grew louder, more distinct. A rustle in the undergrowth that stopped and started. The distant deep hoot of an owl or something that sounded like one, but with an echo that seemed too large for a bird. My rational brain tried to categorize them, to assign them known animal origins, but a primal feeling of unease began to creep in. This was not the friendly hum of a typical rainforest night. This was a cacophony of the unknown. I closed my eyes, trying to conjure Sally's face, her smile, anything to distract from the growing dread. But my mind was too analytical, too prone to problem solving. This place was an enigma. The level of technological sophistication implied by the fence and cameras, juxtaposed with the apparent abandonment and power failure, painted a concerning picture. What kind of event would cause a complete shutdown of such a highly secured facility? Not just a storm. A storm that severe might knock out power, but not render an entire, presumably self-sufficient, operation completely silent. And then I heard it.